Prince Harry is getting slammed by the British media after sharing his views on parenting in a podcast interview with host Dax Shephard. Harry spoke about wanting to break the cycle of pain he experienced because of what his parents suffered. But Good Morning Britain host Ben Shephard reacted, saying Harry's been a father for all of 5 minutes and shouldn't be offering advice. So why are Harry's comments, do you think, being seen as contentious?
Well, as you said, Jess, it's no surprise that the British media has not taken into context his comments. The podcast that he did with Dax Shephard was over an hour and a half. So I get it. Maybe not a lot of people listened. I did. And so when you take that part of the conversation, it was actually two men discussing family trauma. Dax Shephard comes from a violent home. He shared what he experienced when he was young and how that contributed to his mental health issues and his subsequent addiction. Harry was also sharing about his upbringing. They were relating to each other in a really soft, sensitive way, which actually is the kind of masculinity we're trying to encourage men to model. So for the British media to extract this and turn it into a moment where Harry takes the opportunity to attack his parents or attack his family and upbringing is grossly unfair and totally inaccurate. And it's not, though, unlike experiences we've shared on our show here on The Social. Cynthia, I remember you talking about your parents and, you know, the schedule of cleaning and tchotchkes and whatever. I remember you using the word tchotchkes on our show and you saying that you're not going to keep Jaya to that kind of schedule. And Mel, I remember you talking about your dad and sharing and getting emotional and how you want to raise Marqueza in a different way. You weren't slamming your parents, nor are you saying you don't love your parents. You were sharing what you've learned and how you are going to relate that to your children. Prince Harry is doing the same thing. And the British media, of course, again, is following an agenda and running with it. And it's totally unfair.
I love everything you just said, Lainey, and I want to add Sabrina on Facebook's comment. Bottom line, generational trauma is real. When you have kids, it becomes your responsibility to ensure they never have to pick up the emotional, mental, and spiritual tab their parents and those before didn't take the time to heal. You heal those wounds or end up bleeding all over the next generation. Sabrina, I love this comment. It reminds me of that Faulkner line, who I've never read because it's very complicated. But there is a great line he has. The past is never dead. It's not even past. And that really hits home, doesn't it? If you don't care. And Prince Harry, as you said, Lainey, I don't think he was dissing his father at all. They were having this beautiful conversation, and Dax really got under the idea of the more we understand, the older we get, the more understanding we have for our parents. In most cases, in many cases, in my case at least, they did the best they could with what they had, and then some. You know, they tried their hardest, and if we don't take those lessons and move forward with them, the past is never gone, you know?
Yeah, you know, if I can go back to the royal part of this, because it's turning into sport, as we have, well, it's been sport for the British media particularly. And a lot of people taking sides. Either you're on Harry and Meghan's side and you're all with them with their narrative, or you're on the royal family side. And certainly the Oprah interview, it really pushed people out to those two ends. And it seems like it continues with this kind of really silly comment that I'm not sure if this person actually did sit down and listen to the entire thing, because maybe he wouldn't have said this. They just like to pull stuff out of context. But when you talk about leaders, and I think what Harry and Meghan seem to be doing is they are sort of stepping into willingly this role model position. And you want your leaders or people you look up to have had a real life, and secondly, to have self-awareness about the life that they have lived. And Harry, having been, the spare heir, as a lot of people like to call him, he did have an opportunity to live a little bit more of a real life, maybe compared to William and his father, because he was in the military for many years. Who could forget Vegas, all of the things? Like, he's lived a little bit more. And so he comes to parenting with a little bit more experience, with one foot in a very, some would argue, suffocating life in the royal family, where every move and every appearance is very prescribed, versus what he wants for his children. And I would hope that every person that you look up to, leaders, have stumbled, have made mistakes, have self-awareness about it, and want to do differently. So for anyone to slam Harry, whether they think he's slamming his father, it's also just a commentary, I think, on who we put in leadership positions or who we look up to. Have they had a real life experience to draw on? Those are the people I would respect more.
And you know, I think too, Mel, to your point, like this is unfair to Harry because, you know, given what he's been through. But this kind of coverage is unfair to everybody. Take a look at one of these headlines in the Daily Mail coming out of that discussion between Prince Harry and Dax Shephard. This is the Daily Mail, a doctor saying, "Why I fear Harry's had too much therapy."
That is so destructive.
It's
and offends me to
thank
my
you,
core.
Cynthia. Like,
Yeah.
Are we in a crisis of too much therapy in our society right now? Or are we actually in a crisis where people don't have enough access to mental health resources? People don't have the language to talk about mental health. We are in a time where over the last several years, I'll speak for myself, I'm trying to get on board with better and kinder language around mental health. And I think a lot of people want to be the same too, because back in the day, I spoke very unkindly about it. I need to learn. But messages like that from this doctor and the Daily Mail and the British media are hurting that movement. And in hurting that movement, you're putting lives at risk. It is irresponsible. It is dangerous. People are suffering. So to take this moment with Harry and turn it into a crisis of too much therapy, they should be ashamed of themselves. It is disgusting.
Yeah, it really is.